So I want to thank Crop Life International and Howard and then DevX for having me. Howard, somehow I haven't offended you yet, so you keep having me come back, so thank you. I always like to start with the farmers. How many farmers do we have in the room? On behalf of my grandfather and everyone who eats, thank you for what you do, your dedication, and we are here because of you. When I talk about why I care, I'm not going to go through the challenges. We all know the challenges, but why do I care about agriculture? And you can see from this slide, this boy is 13. He is stunted. We all know what stunting does. And he is in kindergarten. 1 out of every 4 children is stunted across the world. And when you think about what that is going to do as our population grows, it is an incredible burden, and a burden we don't have to have. And that is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about agriculture. I also come to it genetically, maybe a GMO from my grandfather, but it's helping young children and then also the smallholder farmer. My grandfather's legacy, many of you know about, but what was most important to him were the smallholder farmers. His last words were, "Take it to the farmer." When he was told he was dying from cancer, he told the doctor he needed 5 more years for Africa, that he had failed Africa. So the smallholder farmer was with him from the beginning to the end, and it really was the last thing on his mind. But if you look at my grandfather's legacy, you have to look at 3 barriers, and this is in his Nobel Peace Prize speech. And he said in 1970 there are 3 barriers in agriculture: the technological, the psychological, and the economic. And those still stand today. And when he said the psychological, that was about getting people young farmers and researchers willing to make a change and use new systems and accept new technologies. When I talk about psychological, and I'm more about communication, we still have that problem today. We have a group of people who fear everything we're doing in technology. And why it's so important about this, and you want to go to the next slide, is we have all these new challenges in agriculture, and they all have all of the challenges we face. We have moms who are now in charge of food and where our priorities and our regulatories. We have food bloggers. We have yoga instructors who are giving nutrition advice online. They have probably a degree from online, and people actually believe them. And that affects everything we do. If you want to go to the next slide. But the most important thing is it affects her, and it affects the smallholder farmers. People don't realize the unintended consequences of their choices or their anti-backlash of what that does to the farmers. We do have a whole new fact-resistant human race who doesn't seem to like to talk about technology or hear about science. So when I do go and speak, I speak about the smallholder farmer. I speak about her realities. And this is her organic farm. She doesn't have soil nutrition. It's been depleted. She doesn't have any modern tools. And the 2 things she probably would need most are good seed varieties and fertilizer. Yet this reality of what a smallholder farmer's life is, in the West, if you go to the next slide, this is what everyone thinks a smallholder farmer in Africa is doing. It's a lovely backyard. They're just with their chickens and they're picking, tomatoes, and everything is easy. And we have a crisis with that and how we're going to change that, because the technologies and innovations we have currently should be with the smallholder farmer. And if you think about, my grandfather always said there's no technology too advanced for a smallholder farmer. And that's still true today. Did we put landlines in Africa or India or any of the other developing countries? No. They leapfrogged into mobile phones. And if you want to go to the next slide. So when you talk about technology and what it's going to do for the smallholder farmer, this is more of the genetic slide. But you think about mobile phone technology, how farmers have insurance. They have access to market information. They have access to banking. Everyone knows what M-Pesa has done for Kenya. And they have so many other things that are coming out, but we can't block them. And if you talk about my grandfather's, probably what he wanted to see a brown revolution with soil, and he wanted to see a gene revolution. So we are at the gene revolution. We have a lot going in genetic editing, or genome editing, and many other things. My company is working in precision breeding or gene editing, and it's exciting to see. But we have to make sure these new technologies that will provide drought-tolerant varieties and many other things are not held up because we don't have a social license or social acceptance to get this and many other technologies to the farmer. Does anyone know digital green here? If you haven't, Google digital green. It is one of my favorite. Ripken, who is the founder, he's a 32-year-old rock star is what I call him. But he essentially is redoing extension for developing countries. We know we can't get an extension agent out or have a system that we have here in the United States that made us what we are today. But he's brought the mobile phone technology and extension videos that can go from farmer to farmer. They're also collecting data so the farmers can have market information. And one of just the simple things that changed in one village was that if you left the flour on the squash, they were tracking data on prices, you got a better fee. So it's small technologies like that that really make a difference. And I think that's where we are with the future of ag, and I think it's exciting, but again, everything has to get to the smallholder farmer, and you can go to the next slide. But before I end, we also have to talk about the next generation. That's my little generation. And that's actually in my grandfather's wheat fields in Obregon. So he's been to different CGs, he's been to Africa, and he's been to Mexico. So I'm breeding him to become the next Borlaug scientist. But we have to use our youth. And the great thing about youth is they're open to technology, and they're interested in going back into farming. I shouldn't even be giving this speech right now because we have Dr. Emma, a phenomenal smallholder farmer. You'll get to hear from her later, who has revolutionized what you can do on 1 acre, and she teaches other people. She has her own fodder system. It's in Uganda. It is phenomenal. So there's so many great stories, but again, when we're communicating, let's talk about the realities of a smallholder farmer. Let's talk about what Dr. Emma goes through and what she teaches other farmers so we get those outside to really understand why technology and innovation can't sit on a shelf, can't be held up in regulatory, or can't be held up in a PR crisis, because you can't be anti-hunger and anti-innovation. This is all my information if you ever want to get to me, and thank you so much.